There are certain currents in this world too deep to be disturbed by mere noise. Some truths vibrate with such force that to give them breath through speech is to invite their consequences. Uttering them out loud sets something in motion. Real things, powerful things that ripple far beyond the ear that receives them. Those who've stepped into higher awareness often learn this the hard way. The cost of speaking too freely is never just misunderstanding. It's energetic, it's spiritual, and in many cases it opens a gate that never should have been cracked open. In a culture drunk on disclosure, where confession is currency and exposure is applauded, restraint becomes a rare and potent form of protection. Silence is no longer just the absence of sound, it becomes your shield. You may not have noticed it before, but certain phrases you've spoken, or even just hinted at, left behind an unseen opening, and what passes through those gaps is not always welcome. If you've ever said something sacred and immediately felt an invisible force recoil, or if things began to unravel right after you gave voice to a deep knowing, that wasn't random. That was response. You were never designed to drift aimlessly. There's a unique weight on your existence, one you've probably carried since childhood. It makes solitude feel like comfort. It keeps you watching, listening, pulling inward while the world reaches outward. You know, without being told, that what you hold inside isn't meant for casual ears. That gut feeling telling you to stay quiet isn't hesitation, it's guidance. And if you've made it this far, still leaning in, still listening, then that understanding already lives somewhere inside you. There are truths that carry so much spiritual charge. Speaking them aloud without preparation is like pointing lightning at the ground. Not because they aren't real, but because they are too real. They shake the structure of everything around them. Their truth is too whole, too fierce, too sacred to be tossed into the air for reaction or validation. These kinds of truths are not to be used as conversation pieces. They are weapons and wonders, and they're only to be drawn when the moment demands it. When divine insight hits you, it doesn't come like a polite guest. It crashes in like thunder, rewiring you, rearranging you, illuminating the places within you that were once dim. These revelations are not yours to display like trophies. They're private assignments etched into your being. When you speak them too soon or to the wrong person, you take that sacred imprint and hand it over to eyes that cannot see and ears that cannot hold. You've probably been through this already. The moment someone laughed at what felt holy to you, the silence after sharing a sacred vision with someone who didn't understand. That pain wasn't failure. It was your initiation. You were never meant to distribute what was given, only to guide you. The insights you receive are scrolls meant for your inner library, not the public square. They shape your movements, not your status. And the moment you share them just to feel seen or heard, they lose something, not their truth, but their impact. The people around you, well-meaning or not, can take your clear message and blur it. They might dilute it, debate it, twist it, or misuse it without even realizing they're doing it, not because they hate you, but because they weren't meant to carry what you've been entrusted with. There's an old understanding passed down through spiritual traditions. Not every precious thing should be laid out for anyone to grab. What forms in pressure, in sacred process, must be handled with reverence. Imagine giving a fragile crown to someone who only sees it as decoration. They will mishandle it, maybe even drop it, because they don't understand what it took to form. The same is true for spiritual knowledge. You may be tempted to share it, to enlighten, to inspire, but pause. Just because you feel something deeply doesn't mean it's time to release it. Discernment isn't hesitation. It's wisdom. It's your soul knowing which doors should stay closed and which hearts are truly prepared to hold what you offer. Not everyone you meet is ready for what lives inside you. Even fewer are capable of hearing it without turning it into something else. That's why discretion is a gift. You don't need to be silent forever. But you do need to wait until the right door appears, the door your insight was crafted to unlock. And just like your words hold power, so too do the parts of you that ache, the wounded spaces, the emotional crevices. Those are sacred too. When shared with wisdom, they heal. But when exposed carelessly, they invite a different kind of energy. To walk this path is to attract attention. Light draws everything, not just other light. And though you may be surrounded by smiles and outstretched hands, not all of them reach for you with honor. There are some who listen just to collect. They gather pieces of your vulnerability like fuel, not out of direct malice, but because they themselves are not whole. Your openness becomes a feast. They remember your confessions. They study your softness. And one day, when triggered or angry or careless, they might use it, not always loudly. Sometimes it's just a look, a sentence, a slight withdrawal that leaves you wondering why you ever trusted them in the first place. And it's not just people. There are forces, unseen and quiet, that operate through the energies people carry. These forces don't need full invitations, just a crack. Just a moment where you drop your guard, thinking it's safe. These energies feed off emotional chaos, off spoken fear, off doubt uttered without protection. You say you're struggling, and suddenly it gets heavier. You whisper your hope, and a wave of doubt washes in. You begin to wonder, why does speaking make it worse? Because not every room is a safe room. Not every atmosphere welcomes healing. Some spaces magnify pain instead of soothing it. And this is why your discretion must extend beyond words. It must wrap around your wounds, your softness, your struggles. Vulnerability is strength only when it is offered to someone strong enough to hold it. Shared recklessly, it becomes a liability, not a flaw, but a door. Your deepest battles are not for public display. They are for your sacred circle. Those few who have proven themselves not through words, but through presence. Proximity isn't proof of safety. Many will stand close to you and still fail to protect you. Even the most powerful figures in sacred texts learned this. Even Christ, in his most fragile hour, was let down by those nearest to him. And yet, that wasn't failure, that was lesson, that was clarity. You're not wrong for feeling the need to pull back, to become more selective. You're maturing. You're learning to build spiritual walls, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Just as ancient temples had guarded entrances and strict rituals before one could enter, your soul deserves the same. Only those with clean hands and clear hearts should be allowed into your inner sanctuary. There's no weakness in quiet, no failure in withholding. There's wisdom in the pause before you speak, in the silence you choose not as a weapon, but as a shelter. That silence becomes your clarity. It filters the moment. It tells you whether the space you're in deserves what's stirring inside you. And if it doesn't, let the silence speak instead. You are not here to bare your soul to every open ear. You are not called to bleed in front of a crowd just to prove you're real. Healing happens in hidden places. Strength grows in secret chambers. Let your restoration be private. Let your transformation unfold without performance. When you speak, speak from overflow, not from emptiness. When you share, do it from a place of completion, not desperation. There are individuals who move through this world like spiritual vacuums. You don't always see them coming. Some wear the face of friendship, others hide behind shared struggle. They ask for your time, your heart, your insight, but give nothing in return. And you keep offering because you think it's kindness. But true kindness involves boundaries. It knows when the well is dry. It recognizes when the giving becomes harmful, even if it's dressed up as help. The spiritual weight you carry doesn't belong to everyone. You were never meant to be drained by every needy soul. You're not here to be everything for everyone. Even those with the greatest callings had limits. Even the most divine took breaks, stepped away, found solitude. And if the divine needed rest, then surely you are allowed the same. Let your energy flow only where it is honored. Not everyone deserves your time. Not every request is an assignment. Say no not because you're harsh, but because you've learned. Give from the overflow, never from the reserve. And when your spirit feels a chill, when your peace feels disturbed after a meeting or conversation, trust that. That's not mood, it's a message. That's your soul telling you something isn't aligned. You are not required to explain this to anyone. You don't owe a reason for protecting your space. The ones who love you will understand. The rest were only there to extract. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it's strategy. It ensures your well doesn't run dry. Because when it does, everything suffers. Your clarity fades, your power dims, your purpose gets muffled under the noise of other people's needs. Stay sensitive to the pull in your chest, the way your breath shortens when you're around certain people, the way your energy feels murky afterward. These are all signals, not warnings to fear, but signs to heed. You don't need to confront them, just withdraw. Just choose silence over explanation, stillness over confrontation. Let your absence speak what your words never need to. You shine with a light that not all will understand. Some will try to mimic it, others will try to possess it. But your radiance doesn't belong to them. It's not a public commodity. It's the result of your alignment, your discipline, your unseen battles. It's sacred, and sacred things must be treated as such. Some individuals walk into a room and say nothing, yet the entire atmosphere bends around them. Their very presence shifts the current in the air, slowing time, redirecting focus, softening or tightening the mood depending on who's watching. It has nothing to do with posture or clothing or even facial expression. It's the frequency that clings to them, the vibration that speaks before they ever open their mouth. And if you've noticed this effect in yourself, if people go silent when you enter, or if you feel energy stretch and pull in your direction, you already know it's more than coincidence. It's resonance. And it's not random. There's something different about you. It isn't a performance. It isn't a skill. It's something elemental, like the hum beneath music, like the stillness before a storm. You carry a kind of charge that provokes without trying, awakens without permission. And because of this, you must walk with care. That energy you emit has gravity. It stirs what lies dormant in others, both the beautiful and the broken, and not all of them know how to handle it. Some are inspired by your light. Others are irritated by it, even if they never say a word. The way you move, the way you choose silence instead of noise, it confronts people who are not ready for that kind of reflection. You've probably felt this already, but didn't have a name for it. Maybe it was a heaviness that followed you after a gathering. Maybe it was the way someone looked at you too long, then said something sharp to break the silence. Maybe it was a friend who kept asking you to help them heal, but turned distant the moment you drew a line. All of these are signals, spiritual feedback, not loud, but clear. You're not just a person in their life. You are a mirror. And not everyone wants to see what's staring back at them. Presence carries influence, not through control, but through gravity. And that influence must be protected, not paraded. You were never meant to throw your light into every dark room. You were not created to blend in for comfort or to shrink for approval. Some spaces can't hold what you carry. Some environments are shaped by things that cling to the sensitive soul. Whispers of comparison, residues of envy, shadows of misalignment. If you walk into a place and leave feeling duller than when you arrived, pay attention. That is your signal to exit, not to explain. When a spiritually attuned person enters a space filled with gossip, chaos, and spiritual numbness, they feel it immediately. Like stepping into thick fog, you can feel your clarity bend. Your inner peace starts to disintegrate. The air tastes different. Your thoughts scramble. You may feel tempted to stay, to fix it, to brighten it, to be the balm. But that's not your assignment. Being a carrier of light doesn't mean becoming everyone's flashlight. There is no virtue in losing your clarity to environments that drain you. Solitude was never meant to be your punishment. It is your recalibration. It is your chamber of restoration. Every spiritual figure worth their salt has stepped back from the noise, not to hide, but to hear, not to retreat, but to remember. The world screams for attention, approval, performance, but in solitude all of that falls away. What remains is truth, your own rhythm, the whisper beneath the pressure. It's there that your true resonance is restored. It's there your discernment sharpens and your purpose clarifies. In stillness, you don't lose touch with reality. You reconnect to the part of you the world cannot reach. And this is why your presence is not for everyone. Presence is a gift. And gifts lose meaning when thrown carelessly to the wind. You do not owe your presence to every request. Your existence is not a public service. You're not here to validate people's comfort zones or perform their expectations. You're here to fulfill a calling that was whispered to your soul long before anyone had an opinion about who you should be. And that calling requires focus. It requires silence. It requires a sacred boundary that keeps your energy protected from the wrong audience. You may find yourself withdrawing more, not out of bitterness, but because your spirit is becoming more refined. There's a shedding that happens when you grow spiritually. The things that once felt necessary, noise, affirmation, busyness, suddenly feel intrusive. You begin to crave quiet not just as an escape, but as a return to your own voice, your own rhythm, your own truth. And that silence becomes your strongest language. It says everything you don't need to verbalize. It makes room for wisdom that noise could never carry. In a world hooked on volume, commentary, clamor, silence becomes defiance, a bold act of sovereignty. People may mistake your quiet for passivity, but silence isn't passive. It's a stance, a signal to the world that you are not available for senseless engagement, that your energy is not for sale, that your worth isn't tied to how loudly you respond. You don't need to react to every accusation. You don't need to correct every false impression. You are not a spokesperson for your soul. Your alignment is not up for debate. When you choose silence instead of engaging in fruitless discussion, you reclaim authority over your inner space. Words can become snares. Every time you explain yourself to someone who has already decided not to understand you, you lose a piece of your peace. And that exchange is never worth it. There is strength in withholding. There is mastery in restraint. Because in stillness, you not only guard your spirit, you unsettle the very forces trying to destabilize you. Silence has always been the language of the sacred. The most profound spiritual downloads arrive not through shouts, but through stillness. That's where revelation breathes, where divine instruction is whispered. Most people miss it because they fill every gap with noise. They speak when they should listen. They defend when they should discern. But you've been called to a different rhythm. When the noise fades, your discernment sharpens. The veil thins, you see clearly. You feel deeper. You know without knowing how. Let others speak. Let them scream for attention. Let them demand answers. You don't owe the world your voice at every turn. You don't need to explain your quiet. Your silence is not the absence of thought. It is the presence of deep awareness. It's how you protect what's sacred, how you keep the divine instructions unpolluted. Because once something sacred is exposed too early, it loses something. It becomes susceptible. It can be twisted, doubted, degraded, and what was once holy becomes entertainment. That's why discretion is critical. Not every spiritual vision is ready for air. Not every relationship is ready for display. Not every assignment is ready for public awareness. The world tells you to share everything. That validation comes from visibility, that if it's real, you'll talk about it. But that's a lie disguised as progress. True maturity understands that sacred things grow in hidden places, that roots form in darkness, not under spotlights. When you expose too soon, you risk contamination. People may not mean harm, but their reactions, be it skepticism, jealousy, or simple misunderstanding, can change the course of what was never meant for their eyes in the first place. Some truths need space to strengthen before they can survive public scrutiny. Some relationships need time to deepen before they can stand the weather of outside voices, and some revelations are not to be spoken until they have completely reshaped you. This isn't secrecy, it's spiritual hygiene. It's how you build without interruption. Speak your plans too loudly, and you might awaken opposition you're not yet ready to face. There are spiritual ears in the unseen listening too. What you announce without guidance can attract resistance before it's fully formed. This is why you've been feeling the pull to keep more to yourself lately. It's not withdrawal, it's wisdom. It's your soul guarding what's sacred until it can stand on its own. The things being built within you, dreams, healing, direction, identity, are not for public broadcast. They are for the sacred inner chamber. Let your progress speak in due time, not through announcements, but through undeniable outcomes. And in the meantime, let your silence carry the work forward. Let the fruit speak louder than any declaration. Because when something truly divine is completed, it needs no introduction. Even your relationships benefit from sacred protection. Some connections are divinely orchestrated, but if they're revealed too early, they become targets for interference. The moment you shout something before it's matured, you hand others the opportunity to poison it, not necessarily with evil intent, but with their fear, their projection, their doubt. That energy clings, that vibration seeps in, and what was once clean begins to erode. Move quietly, build in hiddenness, let outcomes echo instead of promises. This is not hiding, it's honoring. Even in Scripture, we see the divine move most powerfully in secret places, in caves, in deserts, in quiet gardens, not stages, not stadiums. What is truly holy is protected first, then revealed when it's unshakable. Let this apply to every area of your life, your calling, your healing, your partnerships, your vision. Keep them in the soil long enough to grow roots, not just branches. When something is rooted deeply, storms can't tear it out. But if it's planted for display, it won't survive the first strong wind. You're not here to entertain with your evolution. You're here to embody it. Let them wonder. Let them ask. Your life will answer in time. Even the emotional landscape inside you must come under this spiritual refinement. Emotions are not to be dismissed, but neither should they be allowed to command the wheel. Left unchecked, they become hijackers. They derail timing, cloud perception, distort inner truth. A spiritually attuned life requires emotional stewardship, not suppression, but governance. Every feeling is a visitor. Some come to teach, others come to tempt. Your task is to listen without surrendering authority. Begin by observing. Pause when emotion hits. Before reacting, ask, where did this come from? What triggered it? What belief is behind it? Is this sadness old or new? Is this anger from now or from years ago? Emotions aren't bad, but unexamined emotion is dangerous. It can push you to speak prematurely, to act recklessly, to misread people or abandon alignment. You've seen what happens when spiritual power gets tangled in emotional volatility. Even the most gifted people have fallen not because they lacked calling, but because they lacked control. History proves it. A moment of mismanaged emotion has ended legacies. Even prophets made mistakes because they let their emotions override instruction. That doesn't make them evil, it makes them human. But let it serve as a reminder. Emotions must be acknowledged, honored, but ultimately brought into balance. When you master this, everything shifts. You become unshakable. You move not from impulse, but from instruction. You're no longer baited by provocation, no longer swayed by temporary praise, no longer blindsided by your own inner storms. Your spirit remains clear, your decisions hold weight, and your influence, rooted in restraint, expands. That's what spiritual authority truly is. Not loudness, not certainty, but clarity under pressure, stillness in chaos, alignment under fire. There is a sacred weight that comes with being deeply attuned, something most people never understand unless they carry it themselves. It's not visible from the outside, though others can feel it. It's not about being special in the egoic sense, but rather being wired to perceive what others miss. It's the kind of internal compass that reacts before your mind has time to process. You feel things before they're said. You notice patterns others dismiss. You sense what's beneath a smile, beneath a compliment, beneath silence. And while this can be a gift, it also becomes a responsibility. Because once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you know, you cannot unknow. And that changes how you must move. You've likely been in situations where everyone around you seems unaware, distracted, laughing, engaging without a second thought. But you're standing in that same space and something feels off. Maybe it's subtle, a tension under the surface, a glance too long, a tone that doesn't match the words. Maybe it's louder, your body tensing, your spirit whispering, your intuition sounding an alarm. But when you bring it up, others wave it off. They don't feel what you do. They don't carry what you carry. And that can make you feel isolated, even strange. But you're not strange, you're sensitive. You're tuned to a higher signal. The cost of this sensitivity is that you can no longer afford to ignore your inner warnings. You can't explain them away or drown them in distractions. Because every time you do, you pay. You lose clarity. You lose peace. You lose alignment. And most importantly, you lose time. Time that could have been spent moving with grace, instead wasted trying to recover from unnecessary missteps. This is why silence is not just a protective shell, it's a calibration chamber. It's how you return to your own vibration. In the quiet, everything false falls away. The pretenses, the performance, the confusion, only truth remains. You've probably noticed how some people seem to activate chaos in your world. Their presence stirs up old wounds, strange energy, or unexplainable heaviness. At first, you might think it's something you did. You question whether you're imagining it, but over time, patterns emerge. You give your time, your attention, your energy, and you leave feeling worse, not better. They call it friendship, or partnership, or mentorship. But deep down, you know it's a transaction, and the currency is always your peace. These people often don't realize what they're doing. They may even praise your wisdom, your presence, your insight, but their energy consumes rather than supports. They come with questions but never offer clarity. They ask for your time but never leave you feeling seen. These interactions don't nourish, they extract. And if you continue to allow them, you begin to fracture. Not all at once, but slowly, a piece of peace here, a slice of focus there, until eventually you find yourself spiritually bankrupt. And yet the guilt creeps in, the guilt of saying no, the guilt of closing doors, the guilt of withdrawing. But that guilt isn't yours. It was planted by a world that taught you that your worth is measured by your output, that love means exhaustion, that kindness means sacrifice. But none of that is true. The truth is this: you are not responsible for saving everyone. You are not here to be drained by every broken soul that crosses your path. You are here to shine, to carry light, but light that is sustainable, light that is wise, light that knows when to rest. Even the brightest flame needs fuel, and if you give without replenishing, you will burn out. You'll begin to resent the very people you once helped. You'll begin to question your path, your calling, your purpose, not because it's wrong, but because you gave so much of it away to those who never valued it. This is the silent suffering of the spiritually attuned, not the absence of purpose, but the overextension of it. So you must learn the sacred art of boundaries, not the kind formed in anger, but the kind rooted in reverence. Boundaries that say, I love you, but I love me too. I hear your pain, but I cannot carry it. I see your need, but I cannot be the source. These boundaries are not rejection. They are recognition. Recognition of your own limits. Recognition of what your spirit needs in order to thrive. And make no mistake, people will test those limits. Some will do it knowingly, others unconsciously. They will ask for just a little more, just one more conversation, one more favor, one more piece of your energy. And if you give in each time, they will never stop. Not because they're evil, but because you've taught them you're always available. You've conditioned them to believe that your time, your clarity, your sacred space are all open for consumption. And eventually you start to believe it too. But you can reverse that. You can reclaim the space you've surrendered. It starts with one choice, one boundary, one moment of silence where you would have normally spoken, one no where you would have said yes just to keep the peace. And in that moment you shift, not just externally, but internally. You tell your spirit, I'm listening. I'm honoring you now. I won't betray you for approval. I won't abandon you for applause. And something powerful happens when you do this consistently. The wrong people begin to fall away, not in dramatic explosions, but quietly. They sense the shift, they sense the closure of access, and those who were there to consume will not stay. But the right ones, they'll remain, they'll respect the boundary, they'll honor the silence, they'll meet you where you are, not where they want you to be. And that's how you know who's meant for this next chapter. Because when you guard your energy, your resonance rises, your frequency sharpens, you become more sensitive to alignment, you begin to feel the difference between peace and performance, between resonance and obligation, between divine timing and emotional urgency. And that difference becomes your compass. There will be times when the temptation to explain is strong, when people demand to know why you've changed, why you're quieter, why you're not as available. Let them wonder. Let them sit with their questions. You don't owe them a thesis, you don't owe them access to your process. Some people only wanted your energy because it was easy to reach. The moment they must rise to meet you, they fall away. You are not cold for pulling back. You are not arrogant for raising your standards. You are not selfish for prioritizing your soul. This is what spiritual maturity looks like. It's not in how much you tolerate, but in how well you discern. It's not in how loud you preach, but in how quietly you protect your peace. And in this world, peace is a revolutionary act. It's one thing to survive spiritually, it's another to thrive. Thriving requires constant adjustment. Not because you're unstable, but because you're evolving. What worked last year might not fit today. The circle that felt nourishing once may now feel stifling. The roles you played might no longer serve the person you're becoming. And that's not betrayal. It's transformation. Transformation is messy. It disrupts comfort. It challenges identities. It rattles routines, but it's necessary. You cannot ascend and remain the same. You cannot step into higher purpose while clinging to outdated patterns. So the unraveling begins, the release, the undoing. And if you fight it, you'll suffer. If you surrender to it, you'll soar. Let people misunderstand you. Let them mislabel your silence. Let them question your absence. You're not disappearing. You're realigning. You're not vanishing. You're refining. This is the cost of authenticity. You lose the crowd, but you gain your soul. You lose applause, but you gain alignment. And in that alignment, you find the clarity that no affirmation could ever provide. Stillness becomes your strategy, not as avoidance, but as authority. In stillness, you move with precision. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer beg, you discern. You no longer prove, you simply are, and that is enough. It may feel lonely at times, growth often does, but remember, solitude is not emptiness, it is sacred space. The void is not a punishment, it's preparation. You're being emptied of noise so you can be filled with truth. And when that truth fully integrates, your life begins to speak louder than any explanation ever could. And what will it say? It will say you walked away from chaos not because you were weak, but because you were wise. It will say you honored your soul when it whispered, even when no one else could hear it. It will say you refused to bleed for those who would never offer a bandage. It will say you healed, not for applause, but for peace. You become a quiet storm, a calm fire, a still force, unshakable, undeniable, unapologetically sovereign. And that's when the true calling begins to unfold. Not in chaos, but in clarity. Not in reaction, but in response. Not in noise, but in knowing. There's a quiet kind of strength that few recognize because it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't clamor for attention. It doesn't plead for understanding. This strength doesn't need to stand in the center of a room to be felt. It lingers in the edges, woven into silence, held in a glance, residing in stillness. It's the kind of power that only those on a deeper path begin to understand, because it doesn't demand to be noticed. It simply is. And when you carry that kind of energy, everything about your life begins to shift. You may have already noticed how people respond to you differently. Some admire you, even if they can't quite explain why. Others withdraw, unsettled by something they feel but can't name. You might not even speak much, but your presence is enough to stir something in them. That's not magic, it's alignment. And alignment carries a frequency more potent than volume. The more aligned you become, the less you need to explain yourself. You don't need to defend your boundaries, your silence, your absence. They become self-evident to those who are meant to walk beside you. But the moment you begin to embrace that power, you will also meet resistance, not just from others, but from the parts of yourself still attached to old ways, the parts that want to be liked, to be approved of, to be understood. Those pieces don't vanish overnight. They linger in the background, whispering doubts, urging you to prove something, but proving is a trap. And once you fall into it, you begin to lose touch with your own resonance. You begin performing instead of embodying. You begin broadcasting instead of becoming. You are not here to perform healing. You are here to live it, And that means stepping into a life where fewer words hold more weight, where actions carry frequency, where silence isn't a void, but a vessel, a container strong enough to hold the sacred without spilling it. You are learning to carry yourself differently now, with purpose, with intention, with spiritual clarity. That clarity sharpens with every moment you choose stillness over reaction. It grows stronger every time you hold a revelation close instead of scattering it out of excitement or fear. There is a kind of sacred momentum building inside you, a quiet unfolding that doesn't need to be explained to anyone. It doesn't need to be published, documented, or made palatable. It just needs to be lived. And in living it, you'll begin to notice that some things no longer stick. Certain conversations feel hollow. Certain friendships feel misaligned. Certain invitations fall flat, not because you've become too good for them, but because your soul has outgrown what no longer feeds it. You might find yourself revisiting familiar spaces and feeling like a stranger. You might speak less, feel more, and no longer have the urge to participate in surface-level engagement. This is not a loss. It's refinement. Your spirit is no longer interested in fitting in where it used to. That version of you that once shrank to stay small, that explained yourself to feel safe, that tolerated misalignment to avoid conflict, that version is shedding, not because it was wrong, but because it served its purpose. And now, a deeper layer of you is stepping forward. And with that emergence comes a responsibility. The responsibility to be vigilant with your energy, to protect your frequency, to be discerning about who gets to experience your presence, who gets to witness your vulnerability, who gets access to your sacred spaces. You're no longer in the season of explaining that discernment. You're in the season of embodying it. You don't owe explanations for boundaries that protect your peace. You don't need to apologize for choosing silence over drama, clarity over chaos, solitude over performance. In fact, your silence is now one of your greatest tools. It creates space for the divine to speak. It allows clarity to rise to the surface. It reveals what's real and dissolves what isn't. Most people run from silence because they're afraid of what they'll hear in it. But you've learned to make silence your sanctuary. It's where you return to yourself. It's where you hear the things too subtle for sound. It's where you receive instruction the world could never teach you. And when that instruction comes, you'll know it. It won't feel like a thought. It will feel like a knowing, a vibration that lands in your core and anchors itself there. These moments are sacred. They don't need to be shared immediately. In fact, most of them shouldn't be, not because they aren't true, but because they haven't yet finished their work in you. Revelations need time to root before they're released. If spoken too soon, they can be stolen, diluted, or dismantled. You've probably already seen how this plays out. The moment you speak a new insight, someone challenges it, not out of malice, but out of their own discomfort. And suddenly, that seed that was beginning to take root is now under scrutiny. It begins to shrink. You begin to question it. The very clarity that was blossoming in your spirit now feels uncertain. And all of it could have been avoided by choosing discretion. That's not secrecy. It's spiritual intelligence, the ability to know when something is meant to be revealed and when it's meant to be protected. There's a timing to everything sacred. Just as seeds planted in winter cannot survive, sacred truths released before their time cannot flourish. Trust the timing of your unfolding. Let things ripen in the dark. Let your breakthroughs develop in the soil of stillness. When it's time, they'll bloom without effort. and the world will see not your announcement but your embodiment. This applies to everything: your healing, your purpose, your relationships, your evolution. Keep them sacred, not out of fear, but out of reverence. You're not hiding, you're honoring. You're not avoiding, you're aligning. What the world sees as secrecy is actually sanctity, and only those who walk the same path will understand. Even in your closest bonds, this discernment applies. Just because someone loves you doesn't mean they're qualified to handle every part of you. Just because someone listens doesn't mean they hear with spiritual ears. You must learn to recognize who holds space and who simply fills it, who sees your essence and who merely watches your expression. There's a difference, and the more you grow, the clearer that difference becomes. Let your life become the filter. Watch how people respond when you no longer explain yourself, when you stop overgiving, when you choose your well-being over their comfort. The ones who are meant to stay will evolve with you. The ones who were only there for what they could take will fall away, not because you pushed them, but because the frequency shifted, and their spirit cannot align with yours anymore. You're not meant to carry everyone. You're not here to be everything to everyone. Even divine messengers have limits. Even the most enlightened beings needed retreat, needed renewal, needed solitude. Stop expecting yourself to pour endlessly into others while neglecting your own replenishment. That's not compassion. That's martyrdom. And the sacred does not ask you to bleed for it. It asks you to embody it. Embodiment doesn't happen through exposure. It happens through integration, through becoming the very truths you once tried to explain. The more you integrate, the less you need to speak. Your presence begins to speak for you. It shifts rooms, it calms storms, it silences confusion, not because of what you say, but because of who you are. That's true power, that's divine authority. And with authority comes refinement, the kind of refinement that pulls you away from what once felt familiar. You may feel like you're walking alone, but you're not. You're walking ahead. You're forging a new frequency, one that others will follow, but only when they're ready. Don't shrink back just to feel accompanied. Don't lower your standards just to feel accepted. Your path was never meant to be crowded. It was meant to be clear. So let the silence deepen. Let the boundaries strengthen. Let the pruning continue. What remains after the shedding is your essence, unfiltered, undiluted, unshaken. That is your offering to the world, not a version of you shaped by others' expectations, not a performance stitched together by fear and people-pleasing, but a sovereign soul who moves with wisdom, who speaks with intention, who honors the sacred in themselves enough to no longer throw it before those who only trample. And when you do speak, let your words come from overflow, not from obligation. Let your voice be rooted in truth, not reaction. Let your message be shaped by experience, not theory, because then, and only then, your voice becomes medicine. Not everyone needs your advice, but someone needs your authenticity. Someone needs your example. Someone needs your quiet strength to remind them they can be whole without being loud. You don't need to convince anyone. Your life is already speaking. Your alignment is already working. And the right people will find you, not because you shouted, but because you resonated. Resonance is stronger than reach. Energy travels further than noise. So hold your frequency. Stay in your power. Let your silence echo. And remember this: what is sacred is never thrown into the marketplace. It is guarded. It is treasured. It is lived, not advertised. You are not here to convince the world of your value. You are here to carry it, quietly, intentionally, powerfully. This is your invitation to walk differently now, to speak only when moved by spirit, To share only when the ground is ready, to step back when the atmosphere is heavy, to listen when others react, to pause when provoked. This is not weakness, this is mastery, and few reach it, not because they're incapable, but because they never learned to sit in the silence long enough to hear who they really are. But you've tasted that silence. You felt its pull, and now you understand. This isn't about being better. It's about being aligned. It's about protecting what was never meant for exposure. It's about honoring what's holy, not with fear, but with reverence. So let them wonder, let them guess, let them talk. While they speak, you align. While they rush, you refine. While they grasp, you ground. And when the time comes, you will speak, but not to defend, not to prove, not to explain. You will speak to declare what is real, what is whole, what is sacred. And in that moment, the world will not just hear you, it will feel you. Because your voice won't just be sound, it will be spirit. Let that be enough. Let that be everything.